For clarifying questions, for continuing conversations about the presentation last week, and then I think I'm guessing conversations about the work as a committee where we are with kind of this amount of clarity. Other suggestions of probably their time. But you know, we do have some suggestions and we have some thoughts. Okay.
We really appreciate all the work that you guys did. Like, this is huge. I think a lot of us after that meeting, we're feeling a lot more hopeful and like there is some weight that has been lifted off. That you guys have done so much work. I just really want to honor that and make sure you guys know that we really appreciate that. That's a lot done. We would like to also make some recommendations on some other budget amendments that need to be made to reach our goals and our constituents' goals. And coming into bargaining, excuse me, we're thinking about two things. We really want to make sure that PPO 8 is our health insurance option for the base, and we understand that that's $600,000 more that we need.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
My apologies. This is more of a process question.
Yeah.
Should we have a note catcher or something like that? Or?
That would be great.
Okay, just so.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yes. I remembered what I said, so I can type it in if you guys start one.
I'll create it, so yeah.
Thank you. And I can fill in some of these things.
So I was like, gonna write it down, but then I was like, well, everybody's gonna do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of our priorities moving forward is finding an extra $600K for that PPO aid to make that as our base plan. And then our second one is an actual cost of living increase. We really appreciate how you guys have honored, like, not even said that we're freezing it, how we're adding that 1.8 on in our steps and our lanes, and you budgeted for all that money. Our hope and our goal through some of this continued work is that we can find an extra 0.9% that we can add into the base so that we can at least say that we're matching current inflation rate. The current inflation rate is 2.7%. That's kind of where I came up with that 0.9% that we could get into the base. I don't have the specific number of how much money that would cost. And we can explore that. Those would be our two asks moving forward, is that we work together to try and find more money. And I know you guys have scoured and you know, right, you've exhausted all your ends. We had some ideas on how we can find even more money, and we'd love to propose some ideas to you guys and move forward with some other ideas, try and squeeze as much money out as we can so that we can achieve people together. Scratching everyone out. We just propose that moving forward, we really appreciate all the work that the district did. We want to try and find even more money. Hopefully it's not breaking the bank amount of money, but exploring options to find $600,000 to create PPO 8 as the base, and then trying to find 0.9% that we can inject into the salary schedule so that we get a cost of living. So I was just kind of catching everyone up on that. Some ideas that we have to achieve these goals and places that we would like to look to find this extra money is first right-sizing the district office. We know that we've talked about it. What's the right size of a district office? Knowing that we have declining enrollment, taking that into consideration. We would like to look at the learning acceleration plan, look at the metrics to show that if it's working, if it's not working, how effective has it been, and should we continue budgeting and funding some of those positions? And then looking at positions that are doing administrative work, but are being paid on the teacher scale. We know that there's some positions that are classified as teachers, but really are doing more of this administrative role, such as coaches, and we'd like to look at that and moving them around, how would that change and impact the budget, and is there money that can be found in there? We also would like to bring up conversation of selling properties. We understand that this is mostly a school board issue. And maybe that's a conversation that we need to loop them into, and talk about that deeper. But we are looking at some of those one-time costs that we could, instead of dipping into the reserves, could some of those properties pay for that instead of dipping into our reserves? I think in your presentation this year, there were maybe some one-time costs that we're looking to fund through the reserves. And so bringing that one down. Maybe looking at calendar contract days and number of non-student facing positions. Could we cut their calendars? Save money there. And then if necessary, and we really can't find any more money, possibly doing a budget line by line cut, just to find any extra money we can squeeze out of this. That was a lot of information. I can put that all in the notes. Perfect, it's already there.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, where does your current inflation rate come from?
Yes,
Yeah.
It's what the school finance
Okay.
act is using
That's
as
what I thought.
their calculating piece. I know it probably doesn't reflect anything close to reality here, but it's the Denver CPI,
Oh, okay.
Denver Greeley Boulder CPI.
Yeah, no, I mean, cause I pulled it, and the reason why I asked, cause and this is just, I'll have to check the numbers, because I know that when I did the Denver Boulder CPI for the Millennium override, it was 1.4% at that point in time. But then I also know that the inflation rate in the formula, I was thinking it could be 2.7. I was thinking it was 2.3, but that's why I was making sure, so I can check those things.
Yeah, we should certainly, make sure that it's correct, but I feel pretty confident that that's the number they've been calculating
Right.
in the initial runs on.
thank you.
That's a logistical question. It seems like we just jumped in. Are we having any kind of like structure about how this time is supposed to be? How is it just people talking and bringing up ideas? Do we have any like agenda? Do we want to go?
I would say since it's a subcommittee, I know that we're decided to be as much of a whole group as we could for the subcommittee. But just in the nature of subcommittees, it is just kind of free form. Like, if we're trying to follow a similar structure as that's the way, right? Like the subcommittees we've been on in the past have just kind of been free form, and then the only part where there's an agenda normally is the idea of you going out and doing stuff and then bringing it back to the next subcommittee, and then maybe you like present what you researched or.
Okay, thank you.
Stuff that you mentioned.
I understand too, is this just certified, or is there some, oh, there's no classified or. So when we're talking about an increase, this would be a certified increase specifically?
Yes.
Okay.
We want to maybe use, a decision and action record like we have done in our subcommittee. Alicia?
Yeah, maybe, do you wanna put, like,
Yeah.
do you wanna pull from what we did in the
Yeah.
past? And then people can look at it and see if they like that structure. I liked it last year. Lisa.
You gonna put it in the.
Yeah.
Wait, I wasn't able to be at the summit last week, but I looked on the slide and did all of that. So thank you for all of that information. I thought it was super helpful. I specifically appreciated the like, how did you get here section, because I think a lot of staff members have been asking like what has led up to the situation. So that was really helpful. I do wonder though, there was one, I feel like pretty important piece that was left off the timeline, and that was the firing of our previous HR director. And I just wondered why that was not included on here, because that sort of happened in the midst of all of that decision making, and didn't know if there was just, it just was an oversight, or if there was a specific reason why that was not included.
Not really no specific reason, and I think you're right, I mean, that, we talked about turnover being part of the issue, and we had the superintendent turnover, it's a good, I mean, I think. That was February of. January 20.
Great.
Back in 2023, yeah.
The only
That's
thing
why
we've
it
been
doesn't-
concerned about is not putting like fired or, you
Yeah.
know, those kind of things,
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
former staff
Mhm.
turnover issue.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
I did check the governor's, funding, and like the January proposal is at, the inflation rate on the top of the spreadsheet was 2.3%. So just so you guys.
What was the connection between the 0.9 and the 2.3?
So currently the steps are 1.8.
Oh, I see.
They're not certified. They're a little, they're not tied to 1.8 anymore, I think.
Oh, they're not?
No,
Okay.
and I was just playing with them a little bit.
Yeah.
And I, like, folks who've been on salary committee before are gonna have to tell me if this is correct, but I think that because of the way we historically, I mean, I'm not that quick at the math. And maybe I'm wrong, but when I just took the step 1 VA, step 2, it was more of like a. I don't know, maybe my math is, but.
Believe that 1.8 could be an average, because I know sometimes the
Yeah.
intent of the fusion is to bring it to the newer teachers. Other years, the intent has been to bring it to the more advanced
Yeah.
steps. So that's why it might not be to the dot 1.8 all across,
One point
but
is
it's an average,
definitely
right?
the classified.
Yes,
But I'm seeing more like 2 something.
it varies depending a little bit on where the teacher is in their career. Yes.
Can you explain the decision action report that was put at the bottom?
Yeah, our committee last year, as we were exploring the options of things to do, we had, homework assignments, basically. So like, the first one said, asking CEA about returning opt-out savings to employees, who was me, and had a deadline. Then I would sort of come back and put my answer, my research in that last box, so. It's something we could use to just, keep a record of who's been tagged to do what. There might be other options out there as well.
I think the things that we're also coming to recommend. We want to explore, like, we want to look at these, how can we make them work? can we make them learn? And so maybe there's more research that we really need to do about the average cost of living rates and our salary schedule. Maybe we need that needs to be a homework assignment. Maybe we need to look at, some other of those, like more technical details and do some more information gathering. This is just a starting point of like, these are things that we're interested in exploring through this working committee. And that's where we would like to start. And if there's other ideas, other places, if there recommendations, that you all want to voice and share, and we can add those in here, and then we can split up some more homework assignments and look at exploring all of these options.
I'm just making sure, I'm taking a stance of like, just making sure to listen, you know, and understand and clarify. And so that's kind of why I'm just taking everything and thinking about it, just like what, yeah, no, it's great. Cause you guys got to listen to us for 2 hours last time. So I'm just keeping that in mind, you know.
I think one of the action steps I think we need to take is, you provided in this summit presentation last week a salaries context slide that showed how we compare to our comparables. As far as the top start or the starting teacher salary of each of our comparable districts. And historically, that is one of the metrics we have used, but we have used others, and I think we need to do that work that has not yet already been done to make sure we're comparing to the current schedule and that we're not only looking at the first step, but also what we've looked at in the past, which is our max, our MA plus 15 equivalent, and also for several years now, we have not included it in our presentation, but we have been researching our comparisons with Front Range districts that do pull our teachers away. They may not be geographically or population-wise comparable, but, you know, Cherry Creek, Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, Pueblo, there's some of the ones, Adams, I believe, is one of the ones that we've looked at. And so I do think that we're missing something if we're just looking at this starting teacher salary. We want to see how we compare across those metrics that we've historically used. And I don't know, maybe you've already done that. Or there's usually like a little thing, Shannon always created this little, like, here's where we are, and then she just plugged the numbers in. I'm happy to do the legwork of like, all of, you know, whatever I need to do, getting on the websites and looking, filling in, telling me, tell me what you, where to put it, I'll put it in there. Some of the districts can be a little tricky to compare because, well, I think Eagle's gone away from that now, but you know, when they have these like ranges of salaries instead of like a schedule like ours, it's hard to look at and we kind of have to guess on some of those, but. Like, I think Aspen is probably higher than we are when we're looking at like that salary and 15, MA plus 15 equivalent, and things like that.
Is there a reason why Lewis Palmer is on there?
Yeah, it's always ours. Because they're around the same size district as what we historically compared to. So Lewis Palmer is size, and Littleton should be on there. Littleton's not, that's always been one that's been a size one. And then the other ones are mostly comparable because they have a similar kind of demographic and.
That makes sense.
Yeah, like a ski area, or else they're close to us, like RE2. Delta, I don't know actually why Delta's on there, but Delta's historically been like way low. They're usually way lower than,
We're looking at doing those comparisons in our IBB from 23 to 24. There is a tab that talks about district comparisons already in there. And is that not going to be already the most updated? If that is 23 to 24?
well, year. Compared to what everybody is at this year, it's always a little bit weird because people, the other districts usually, end up updating theirs after ours. And so it'll look like we're ahead and then all of a sudden they'll update theirs and then now we're behind again. Whatever, but
So that actually,
it's a little wonky the way it happens, but.
the working documents, 23, 24, there's been information from the previous year.
We always, I go to the website and I look at this
That's
year,
where they
what do they
are.
have on this year?
Yeah, because the reason why I haven't been able to dive into this year is because we've been trying to find out. And now we've got to get the schools their budgets, and so and then we're down one person in finance,
I'll do it. You tell me, I do it every year, so I will do it. You just
Yeah.
tell me where to put it.
and yeah, it's, and then I have to learn it first, so that's the other challenge, is like, I don't know. But I mean, yeah, I'm gonna need to figure out, because I have to get those budgets for my committee too.
No, well, we'll share the look.
Yeah, this
Plug
is
in
not-
stuff in. But yeah, to
Yeah.
a spreadsheet, basically.
We can find that information, and CEA can help us pull information from other districts.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I would usually probably have more bandwidth, but with those other items, just trying
But
to
a
get
little
this
bit,
right
yeah.
here. It's
For
just
sure.
like, I mean, just being real.
No.
But the other thing I wanted to note in here too, as I've been doing some budgeting work, is that I discovered, as I was looking in the school finance act formulas, that I just want you guys to be aware that the current governor's, projection, it takes everybody's cost of living down to a maximum increase of 23%, from where we were at is 30%. That's like $500,000 reduction for this school district plus. So I want you guys to know that, just advocate for the school district. That's just something I, don't have time to do, but really, we all need to get in there, because it's really hard to get this if we're losing that money, because now they're not allowing these districts that are living in high, cost areas to really fully get the benefit of that. So that was a big pill to swallow for me this year. So it sounds really great that we got the additional money, which I'm grateful for, because they were originally saying, oh, we're gonna be flat, for all the at-risk calculations, but then they did take that away behind the scenes, so I just want people to be aware. Cause I emailed Tracy Reed and I confirmed that.
And Christy, since you're overloaded, you can tell me no, but have you seen a salary schedule sandbox yet for us? Or come across one that we could start to create into a sandbox, so we can start playing around with some of these numbers?
Do you know what we mean when we say sandbox? No.
Okay.
So I just said, was trying to keep us all on the same exact.
Usually we get, like, Nathan will make a sandbox, he's been calling, was he using?
The one that from last year is called SY 23/24 IBB salary schedule.
I think you call it a sandbox because you play.
You can play in it.
Yeah.
You would make different tabs and you'd be like, okay, this is what it looks
So
like.
if you
if
do
we have
this, this
year.
will happen, if you do this, this will happen.
It always
And
has.
he has like, he just figured out how to like make different rules, so like, you just type in the very top, like, that if we change it this percent, this is the whole salary schedule changes.
Okay.
But it also has the salary schedule, the scattergram of where all the teachers are on the salary schedule. And then the actual cost too, so the salary scattergram with the cost of each person. It's really fantastic, and it's been super useful
They're finding the old one to share.
to share with you. And I can help you learn Excel and figure out how Nathan has made all those rules and help you out. I wasn't sure if you have come across anything like that or.
I've seen budget sandbox, so I was
Similar.
familiar with the term, but I hadn't seen it for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll send you one that we made last year, like Megan just brought the one up that.
Meg, what's it called? It's called SY /24, IBB salary schedule work. It's
Okay.
in
I
our.
got it, I found it. I'm gonna link it in the minutes.
Thanks, perfect, thank you. Yeah. I mean, we can just use that and delete cells and whatever, delete numbers and put in this year's cells.
Right.
Assuming it's sound.
Megan, if you jump up to sewer and those are where we find this for the current year. If you click there, it was a really nice, every school district starting salary, I mean, what's, like, step one, are you seeing that spreadsheet?
No,
Oh,
yes.
it's fascinating. At the very, I don't know where this came from. But at the very least, it has the links to all the salary schedules for those districts. So it might be a shortcut, so like as you're working on those.
Yeah, but that'll be for the 23-24 year. And so I have to go to the district, and I'm happy to do this. I've done this historically.
If you scroll way to the right, that's, I know what you're saying, like you need the updated, if you
Yeah.
scroll way to the right, it takes you to the district's website, so if they've updated it, it would be there. I was just trying to see what I mean for you.
Yeah.
Looks like it came from Case. They could just give you.
I don't know why.
So yeah, I linked it, salary sandbox from 23-24.
So if nothing else, maybe I should call it something else. Yeah.
So we can put that on the list of things to do. If somebody wants to like kind of tag team with me, we can just maybe work on that together just to get it all inputted. For this year, I would look on the one that Autumn put in. I would work on the district comparisons tab. And I just.
Should we make a copy of?
Yeah, I'd have to make a copy of it and then, just put in this year's numbers.
Megan, you just volunteered to.
I'm volunteering, but I'd love it if somebody could help me like create
Yeah.
that spreadsheet.
For sure, oh, the sandbox,
Yeah.
Yeah. I can help you with that.
Copy it or whatever, and then I can. Remember them.
I've never done it, so look on the record back. I can help look for things. Yeah, okay.
I appreciate you guys helping with all that. That's really helpful.
We've done it both ways. We've both done it before.
I know
we're on
nobody has
salary
extra
last year,
time,
so
so.
you had to.
But I think the scattergram, we need to.
Yes.
Yeah, the scattergram, I think that'll be the one
That's
that's like, I don't know.
100% you
where to
gotta
find that. And I
So I'll
wonder if
probably
there's
have to
like,
get trained on that.
there might be some fancy Excel rules going on in here. If we just get that updated scattergram.
Yeah. I kick everybody out of budget spreadsheets, so, yeah. Once I know their mind, then, yeah.
One thing I'm wondering about, just process wise, like, we had our list of things that we introduced that we wanted, I guess, the district to keep taking a look at. And I just wonder, Christie, if you have had a chance to review the budget proposal from March 2023 for the learning acceleration plan. That was an investment of $900,000. And just like if you go 900,000, there's also learning acceleration plan facts where it talks about, making sure that this investment is sustainable, that the cost for 23-24 is approximately 900,000. And I guess I feel like when this first came out, we had a lot of conversation about it in IBB. And I thought it was introduced, and I feel like from what I'm reading in these facts, from our website and in the budget proposal slides, is that it was a multi-year, multi-cycle plan, multi-budget cycle process of investing, revising, and reallocating district resources. And so, Anna, you said that those positions were kind of baked in now to school budgets, and I feel like that wasn't what we were told when that was introduced. That, it feels like from the information presented here, from what I remember, that this is something that we would continue to look at. I'm curious, like, how are we measuring the effectiveness of the learning acceleration plan? It's a huge investment. We added a position at the district office level that has not historically been in our district. It's complicated because I don't want anybody to lose their job, and I really appreciate that you guys are saying you don't want to cut positions, but I do think that if we're going to hold to what we told people, like told the public in board meetings, this came up, that was part of this plan and rolling out this new very large investment, that we owe it to our students in our community to look at, is this a plan that we need to look at again and revise or reallocate?
And on top of that, I also wonder, like, what is the metrics that we're using to rate the effectiveness of the learning acceleration plan? Like, at what point are we saying, like, that was a good try, it's not showing us results, let's pivot and do something else? And I don't know if you guys as district leadership have talked about, like, what are those metrics, like, what are you guys specifically looking at? And maybe it just needs to be, we need to have some metrics. What are we looking at? What are we trying to? We know what we're trying to achieve.
But I don't know that we do. I don't know that it's really defined what the overarching goal was and how we would know that we reached it. You're right.
I feel like I remember it being about decreasing the achievement gap. Because I think if, like, you look at what it's targeted at, like a lot of the supports that it provided that are extra or to address that. And I just would question that would be a really good metric, right? Is while comparing our data, whether it's, the SAT suite for high school or the CMAS data for the lower, grades, whether that achievement gap is indeed shrinking as a result of this plan. Right? Because I don't know, I mean, I feel like that was implicitly in it. So that would be an easy metric.
Oh, I don't think it was implicit, I'm sure it was directly stated.
Okay. You're on some slides with it, Heather, are you seeing anywhere? Yeah, all of this is on the school district, but it was part of the Unified Improvement Plan process and determined through that process that it was a strategic priority and it warrants funding because of that. And I think, like Stacy had said, this was like the third year of the plan, but we're only in the second year of this plan. So, you know, this is, there's a lot of information, on the district webpage. If you search learning acceleration plan, that I think really speaks to the history of how this was rolled out. And it very much felt like this is a priority and we've got money to do it. And it's a multi-year, multi-cycle budget process to bring it to fruition. So it feels like, and I'm, you know, not gonna make the numbers, so sorry, it feels like an important thing to look at, you know, budget proposal. If that's what we're talking about, that's on the web, on the slides there.
In our district UIP, the data that's used is middle school ELA growth and achievement, SAT reading and math for minority students, and also reading and those and elementary literacy achievement. Could you put that in? Yeah, I can show you the UIP.
Question, in reading.
But, oh, sorry.
Go ahead and finish.
I just wanted to caution, like as Heather said, we're a year and a half in, and that's pretty, we don't evaluate a curriculum for a year and a half. We like monitor as we go, but a year and a half is still implementation.
I mean, and I'll be really honest, you guys, that like, and maybe this is a mess in turnover, but this was a plan from the previous administration. And, you know, all of this website, these updates are from the 22-23 school year. And I will absolutely mean that when I came in as interim, acting and interim in 23-24, my understanding was that these investments were now baked into the school resource allocation framework. So the deans and the coaches, like when we do the formulas for school funding, what we were, like what I've been working with, and you know, like part of you remember, we were looking at those like rainbow sheets last year in this team, and that was like, there was a lot of work that we had an interest in really last year, understanding if those resource allocations were right. And I actually think, Heather, it's the same question you're asking, is like, are these allocations of positions in schools the right allocations? And so I will name that, like, from my understanding, and this could totally be me, but the learning acceleration plan was a thing the former administration did at the end of the last strategic plan. It became integrated in the school resource allocation frameworks. When I got here, we were slated to build a new strategic plan. And the minute we started that work last year, I never once thought about, considered the LAP, that it was kind of over. And I might be totally wrong, and I don't know if there's anybody to talk about with this, but like in my head, like these investments were now baked into the school resource allocation framework. We were paying for them. And what we were doing in the 23-24 school year is building a totally different strategic plan with some similar initiatives, but they were picking those up and driving those. And so, like, I will be really honest, I feel no, Dave is wrong, obligation, commitment to this beyond, continuing the structures that are in the school resource allocation frameworks that exist currently, and asking these same questions, Heather, especially as we go into a declining enrollment world, that says, are these the right staffing levels? Are these the right positions? But I don't, like, I think you're right to ask, like, we have this plan, what were the metrics? And I would frankly say that in my lens and as the district, our strategic plan has trumped all of this. Like, it has very tight measures, it has very tight initiatives and metrics, and so I mean, we could unpack this, but I'll be honest, like, I don't feel, I mean, I will name for sure, and actually we were talking about this with admin IBE, like the work on the school resource allocation frameworks, like, are these the right staffing levels? Are these the right positions? When we look at that and we see, you know, every school has a principal, AP at this many, you know, middles and highs have a dean, middles and highs have an athletic director, elementaries have this kind of coaching. Here's our staffing ratio for CLBE, and our, like, I feel like, and this is part of the work we were doing last year, that like I just inherited these frameworks and these ratios from the learning acceleration plan, from previous IBD negotiations that came up with numbers like 18.35 to 1, with numbers like 29 to 1 for CLDE. And so I felt like last year we started the work of saying, are these right? And so I don't disagree that asking those questions is really important. I will be honest that tying them to the learning acceleration plan to me feels like some old administrative, like teams efforts. And I would say tied to the strategic plan, super interesting. Let's talk about that. Let's look at those measures and metrics. And yes, let's interrogate those ratios about, are we getting what we wanted out of this? You know,
Yeah.
to the, I don't know, but that's,
You brought up positions, and only because I was rereading the learning acceleration plan. It talks about deans, it talks about deans could be out of the teacher salary or could be out of the admin. Can you clarify where dean salaries are coming from? Teaching. So I
I
guess
mean, we
that's a
don't
conversation. that-
separate it.
Well, it's a concern because they're essentially admin. They have access to our school growth, they give us coaching, they give us feedback. So it doesn't feel like, and some building coaches, academic coaches too. So if they have access to school and grow, if they have, and we're also hearing from deans that they go to work before teachers, they stay at work after teachers to do administrative jobs, not to do things that are not just day. Yeah, not just a day every year. So there's a conversation and a concern, and that was also part of why we brought up the learning acceleration plan, because that's where some of these positions were created, and that's where our concerns are coming from.
Yeah, I think, the context for that was that we were talking about the fair share and that, the fair share states that a certain percentage, what's the percentage of the? Yeah, 2/3-ish of the, staffing budget, right, goes to the certified salary schedule. And so that was like the same math that we did when we were talking about the, building subs, for example, that like the more people that you put into that certified fair share group, the less money there is available for each individual in that group. And the way it went down that year, which was the year before last, was that we couldn't get an answer to that question during the IBP negotiations. We were asking, like, are these deans gonna be paid from this fair share? Or are they gonna be paid from the outside the fair share? And it came as like a memo after our negotiations concluded, like, oh yeah, we're giving them that they're in the certified salary schedule. They're part of the fair share. And the reason that matters is because that's money that's set aside for like student facing and classroom teachers. And so that's like, I think where the concern is, if those people are acting more on the administrative level, then they shouldn't be included in the teacher's allocation pot. Does that make sense? And it felt weird to us because we asked the question and we couldn't get an answer during the negotiation. Then afterward, they're like, oh yeah, they're gonna be added to your, so every single one of those positions that's added, right, lowers the potential for the, the salary schedule for each box. And that was like what we figured out that's why we stopped doing the building subs, because they were being paid out of that, and it was like $100,000 per person, right? So, and we were like, we couldn't afford it, couldn't afford all those, but then somehow we could afford this other thing, and I'm not arguing the importance of that position. Obviously, I'm like tied to that, but it does matter, like, if those people are getting paid from the certified salary schedule, then they're like Stephanie said, their hours should be teacher hours, they should be getting a protected plan time, and their work should be student facing and with the aim of helping teachers, not the aim of making the administrator's job.
Without access to student or anything like it.
Yeah, they shouldn't be coaching. Yeah, they should, because that's not, a teacher like responsibility, right? So, yeah, it was weird how it happened because we asked the question, couldn't get an answer. It came after the negotiation was over, and so we were like, oh, okay. It seemed like, it's just weird for us because we were like, oh, is that the plan all along? They just didn't want to tell us while we asked the question, or how did it come to pass? But, you know, and just to respond to what you said, in our conversations last year, it was like, okay, we put in all these coaches as part of the learning acceleration plan. And I agree with you, we don't need to keep using that terminology because that plan is expired, but those people are still in place. The conversation that I remember us having in that committee was like, is there data to suggest that having a coach is more effective than filling all these positions of you know, classroom assistants? And like, that was my query, was like, would it be better to have a human in the room helping the students with that work rather than a human across the hall in an office making plans for how to help the teachers help that student? So, you know, and I think that's something that could be looked at, like, because I don't think that involves removing positions, right? But it might be like, yeah, we've got all these positions open for, you know, help that we can't get, and yet, like, we have all these people who are not working with kids in the building. So, I think it's still a great question to ask. Like, and what's the data? What do people know about that? Like, how effective is that to have teacher coaches versus more teachers? You know? So I don't know. That's just a little bit of the history of that conversation.
I guess I just want to add, like, I wouldn't say actually it's expired at all. Like, it's on our district website and it uses so much language that it's a multi-year process. The ultimate outcome is to accelerate learning and achievement for students. Some of this work is already begun. Some of it will require additional resources. You know, we've used the 2.6 million at-risk funding that we received in spring 2022, as well as grant funding and more efficient use of existing school budgets. Like, I mean, there's a superintendent column, you know, and of course, like, this is the previous superintendent that wrote this, but he is, you know, talking about this year, we're doing this with the plan. Next year, we're doing this. And so this year, like, that first phase, what has expired is kind of the first phase of, like, bringing those coaches and interventionists up to full-time that were previously part-time, and hiring an additional person at the district office level. That has never been a position in our district that I'm aware of. That's part of this plan. There's a board meeting that's reported, that's available to watch, where the plan is introduced and rolled out. So you know, teachers that in my building are like, I mean, and all along from the beginning, people were like very leery of this plan. And that feedback was given.
Yeah.
And it was, well, you know, it's a multi-year thing. It felt like it was something that would be reassessed as time went on, because it involves money and budgets, it's ongoing expenses. And it says things like teacher salaries won't be affected barring any, you know, and I'm paraphrasing because I'm not on the right page, but barring any budget, you know, shortfall or something, you know, to that effect. And so people are worried about why we're not looking at this when we're talking about budget.
I would like to just add the part about, that's also on that page about the learning acceleration plan says that the ultimate outcome of the plan is to accelerate learning and achievement for all students, especially close to the difference in achievement between our subgroups. And that is being the major goal of the plan still exists of being necessary to figure out how to achieve that plan. And that is still something that we're struggling with. And passing the policy ADB, part of that plan was also states that resources will go towards needed subgroups who are not achieving in the same way.
Kenny, to your point though, that, I mean, I was saying, like, are the coaches the right resource going to those subgroups? Or the teacher in front of them, the right source going? Is more intervention, is it smaller class sizes? Is that right? Like, do we know that what we're spending in the teams and the coaches, the right resource? Nobody here believes that closing that gap is a huge important thing.
Right.
Is, are we doing it the right way, and at what financial cost is it? And if it's financially costing us a lot to do it the wrong way, shouldn't we check and adjust right at this moment, especially when we're in a budget crisis?
Yeah, exactly. And like now that it's been implemented for a couple of years, we should be able to see, like, is that gap closing? You know, is it working? And if not, then which of those things is a misdirected attempt? Like, it's, you know, it's a good try, but maybe we need to try something else if there's been no difference. I don't know.
And to Kendall's point about curriculum, you're right, we don't give up after a year, but after a year, we know where it's failing us, where our holes and gaps are, and we are supplementing it, we are fixing it, we are tweaking it, doing whatever. We haven't touched this plan after a year, we haven't. After year two, we haven't touched this plan, we haven't tweaked it, we haven't adjusted it, we haven't made sure we are headed in the right path.
I think, yeah, like the deans in the learning and acceleration plan box, it's saying that this position is intended to allow principals and APs more consistently to get in the classroom to coach. I'm not saying that's bad, but that role is specifically doing administrative work because they're taking something off of admin's plate. Is that the most effective way that we need to be using this money?
I'd argue that's not necessarily administrative work, because like we don't have a team. We have a behavior interventionist paid for with grant money. She is doing that same work that some of the deans do in terms of behavior support, and it's not, I wouldn't call it administrative work. I would say I am not trained to be behavior support. I just happen to be.
You know, I totally hear the frustration with the learning acceleration plan, but I'll be really honest, y'all, like, I don't see this as with the strategic plan that I believe had very comprehensive input from staff, and families, and evidence and research that led to, I put the link in that. And I agree with you, Heather, like, it's still on the website, so what's up with that? I think that's fair, push. But I will be honest, like, I don't think about that plan at all. I don't stack our work up against it. I don't pay attention to the aspirations because my first year in interim was developing a 5-year strategic plan that is built on the backs of some of those people. Like, when I look at the priority around students first, right, which is our first goal, where we talk about student leadership and school culture and SEL, 100% of that work right now happens at least at the middle school and high school level with the deans. And so I would say that, yeah, absolutely. Are we laying some groundwork for their work? Are their metrics tied to their work in student leadership and school culture? 100%. And it's in there. On February 22nd, there will be a live data dashboard that will actually be really cool to see if the deans are work. Like, I would say initiative number 1 is pretty much on the deans. And so if you ask me in, I'd say 3-5 years, is it working? We're going to know because we're measuring student belonging. We're looking at discipline data for that initiative.
And I think we'll be able to answer that question. When I look at priority 2, the rigorous learning for all, a lot of those initiatives, are being driven by coaches, by content teams. You know, we've gone all in on the theory that, you know, the pathway to high quality teaching is through coaching. I mean, I see it when we look at the initiatives on rigorous learning for all. So I do feel, when you look at teacher development, strength and observation, feedback, coaching systems, like, you're right, like, and I don't know that I have always the background to defend that. I mean, what I know from the strategic plan development process is that the strongest evidence to increase teacher quality is high quality coaching. And so we've gone all in on that. Now, I think it's fair to say, are we getting high quality coaching? Is it highest leverage? Are we seeing the outcomes for kids when a teacher is getting coached? I think those are fair questions. And I do know that, like, that's what's like School to Grow is supposed to help us track and see, like, what are the coaching cycles looking like? Are people actually getting real touch points? Is there content behind those coaching cycles? And I think that, so when I think of the LAP, I feel like, yeah, it's definitely, there's pieces of it now that were investments that showed up in the school resource allocation framework that we're using on a strategic plan, but I don't see us, and I totally understand that everything I'm saying is like, oh yeah, it's like education, where it's like you get a new person and they get a new curriculum and everything we worked on for the last 2 years is out the door and here we get a whole shift again. So I know that that's what this feels like. And I don't think it's wrong to ask, are we getting what we want out of deans and coaches? Are we getting what we want out of these positions? I would say our path to answer that is the strategic plan and the metrics in that. And again, I mean, if you get on the strategic plan website, and you go to the performance measures, you'll see some of the pieces that are going to show up on the dashboard. It's not quite live yet, but it will be by the end of the month. So I do think we're going to have these metrics to be able to see if it's working.
I think that makes sense. I think the only big piece of it is that it is attached to money, attached to a lot of money. It's not just these people are already here at these positions already exist. It's a lot of money that was created. And so, our dean is doing really great work at our school, but I also know that is, you know, that's coming from it. That's a teacher. Like, if I'd rather have a dean or a teacher, I'm gonna want to have a teacher just to support our students. So I think if we're looking at like having to not have the percentage increase of cost of living, then we lose really good teachers, so we can keep one dean. I feel like that's where it just is a little tricky. So that's hard to swallow. Thinking like of some really great teachers that we lose because they can't afford to live here because of the cost of living and what we will do with ourselves.
And I'm going to go back to the hanging out of the right place.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't.
Which will help teacher salaries. Because that's a reoccurring cost.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be really, I'm gonna have a really hard time, given the thought that went into the development of the strategic plan, knowing that the achievement and well-being of our students of color and emerging bilingual students was at the heart of this plan. And knowing that this was built around the staffing levels that are in that school resource allocation framework and the theories of action that led to all these initiatives to advocate to pull back funding from that, right? I mean, this is a 5-year strategic plan. I would have a really hard time explaining why we would pull back some of the levers that we took an entire year to say these are the right levers without actually getting our metrics up and see, because I do think we need to answer those questions. Is this the right work? Are these the right levers? And I believe that our process last year in developing this plan was very thorough and used some really thoughtful approaches, and it was evidence-based. We had a lot of eyes on it. I think we have the right measures to track it. I think we got to let it go to honor our kids and our commitment.
Well, I don't think anyone's arguing that plan was not created. I think you guys did a great job with that. I think, it also was based on a situation where teachers had more money and that we had stronger insurance and that, like, there was a lot of things that was based on when that was created. and then things changed. And so I guess, and we can move forward, I don't think, you know, in this moment right now, but I just think that we, in our luxury world, we have all of these things, but we unfortunately are not living in that luxury world right now, and so what pieces do we just need to reflect on? And I'm not even necessarily advocating that this is a thing, but I think all ideas should be open right now. So we're looking at. And, because the school district that we had when we created this last year is not the school district that we're in right now.
And I wonder, to Heather's point, how many people thought we would be reevaluating LAP because we thought it existed outside of the strategic plan, you know, and people didn't voice things in the strategic plan because they thought the LAP would come up as something to.
I think that's great. Yeah, I mean, to me, that's very clear. And I'm glad you brought up, Heather, that like, and the fact that it's on, I had no idea that it's like, on the website. That, again, I don't ever, and I can tell you, I have not thought of the LAP in 20 months.
But teachers have.
Teachers are.
Right, and that's a very big aha for me, that like, wow. We have to make that transition, you know, and I don't know, I mean, that's really helpful feedback, and I also recognize that simply because of our capacity right now, like, yeah, we're late, we're probably 2 weeks, we should have had our strategic plan started looking for. There's like, the old ones, at least we got them down, but the new ones need to get up, you know what I mean? Like, we have work to do on, I think, properly launching this thing. Or at least making it clear that it exists right now.
I think moving on to Autumn's point of like, we're not the same district, we know that we're about to go through some. Well, like we have this student enrollment decline, and I think maybe this just fits into a bigger and harder conversation of like, are we staffing correctly? Like, are these the right positions moving forward, knowing that we're declining enrollment? What are the positions that we need to keep? What are the positions that we need to make sure that are like the most effective positions? And are we the right size moving towards declining enrollment?
Maybe another way that we could say that is, to, ask for flexibility, whereas like, if we have a goal that you guys stated in your presentation last week that we don't want to fire people, right? But if the numbers change, then there may be people who need to be reassigned, right? Like if we lose a bunch of teachers from one school retire, right? Then, and we're trying to limit the hiring so that we don't add, you know, what am I trying to say? That we're gonna utilize the attrition to save money, right? That people might be reassigned. So maybe one thing we need to consider is that in some of those reassignments, there shouldn't be a hard line between the district office and the school buildings and the coaches. Like some of those coaches, right, have to go back and teach, you know, they're good at that. They're really good at that. We lost them. Or some of those, you know, it might happen that I just don't think, hey, like your school's losing enrollment, so you're gonna have to move to this other elementary school. If that's a reality for the teachers, that should be a reality for, right?
Oh, I don't know if that's actually a law.
What's a good start?
Teachers can't be reassigned without, consent of the school accepting them. They can't just be it. Like, that's why we got into all the trouble around Riverview.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I know what you mean,
Okay.
yeah, if they, right, but if they lose enough students, then there's not enough.
But that's what happened at Sobris and Glenwood Elementary and Glenwood Middle, and those teachers were not reassigned.
Oh,
And they couldn't be.
Yeah. So yeah, it sounds like if we have to lose 15 FTEs, 15 people will be displaced unless they voluntarily move into an open.
That's where I would say that we're, and it's not, like, I don't think we're settled because school leaders haven't gotten their budgets yet. But that was that initial, like, running through numbers to get to that 15, a lot of them are partial and fractional. And I would say most of them, when we talked to school leaders, they were like, oh, I've got enough like attrition, that retirement, resignation, non-renewal. Most of the schools have felt like it's gonna be this is manageable, that we're not into a displacement place.
So do individual schools already know how many FTE they will be losing?
They have an estimation and they don't have the final numbers. We're still working on their school budgets.
Is there a timeline?
Oh,
That's
Christy,
why I'm
because we
saying I
get hours
can't
of
do
it out
anything
this
else
week.
until.
I can tell you where Christy Chacoin's gonna be all day Saturday, we'll try to get those done, and, you know, we typically try to get them to leaders by Leadership Council of February, that was this morning, we're not ready. I mean, Christy can do a lot of amazing things, but we're not ready. Like the school resource allocation frameworks are very confusing. The spreadsheets for school budgets take massive amounts of understanding to get there. And it's been, I mean, absolutely incredible what Christy's been able to do to even be like within a couple of weeks here of getting those school budgets, but we're working as fast as we can. And I can tell you that like the pressure from school leaders, it's pretty intense. You know, they would like to have this clarity as soon as possible. Because they're running numbers.
Would it be possible though, because some of the things we talked about just from talking to Deeds is that, like, I know it's not that much money, but it's a little monetary gain. $288,000. Oh, well, what I was saying was the days that they come in where other teachers, sorry, very different than that. Where teachers are not there yet, where they come in and they do, you know, plans around like those open PD days and stuff, like when teachers come back, I know that deans do a lot of work with the admin on planning those, at least at the high school, right?
Yeah.
So those, and then they have to stay after the school year ends, right? And so just the question, yeah, there's 10 full days that we are paying, you know, and that's for middle and high school. Would that be a possibility of a budgetary, you know, solution in a very small way of just saying you were not coming in? That is not going to be something that we're going to pay you extra to do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's kind of a workaround a little bit, like a little tweak. It's not everything we need, but at least it gives us some return on investment.
Yeah, you know, Alicia, I'll be like, that is definitely a strategy we used in the DO.
Okay.
When it was like, does this person really need to be at 252? Can they go to a 220?
Yes.
It's pretty damn
Yeah.
quiet here in July. You
Yeah.
know? And are they really responding to things? And so it is a strategy we've used. I mean, I'll name that, like, is there another round? Again, we were really reluctant to get into school-based position salaries, scope of work, schedules as a potential. And I think that if we felt like, no, let's take some time to explore if there are ideas like that. Let's hear from the deans, let's hear from admin, let's hear from, you know, what's the value of that? What would be the potential savings? Is that something we could live with? I mean, is there another round of like, hey, let's see, because I mean, I'll be biased, like Christine and I were looking for millions of dollars, so we stayed pretty in the high numbers. We weren't trying to stack up maybe $5,000 and $10,000 or $20,000 savings for this first kind of go round. And, you know, is there an opportunity to maybe look deeper and look at even school-based teams, which again, we were really reluctant to push on in these plans. And yeah, I mean, I would love to like have a chance to like pull some ideas together, look at what would those savings, talk to the team, you know, talk to the teams, like, what does this look like for you? You're expected to drive some strategic initiatives. What does that mean? You know, what does that mean? Is that too much time? Is that enough time? What do you need? Yeah, I mean, I think those are the kinds of things that we could keep looking at.
Yeah, I have a question, just another process question. Do you think it might make sense for us to start to put together a parking lot of things and ideas or cuts that maybe I don't know how far this would reach, or just to give folks those questions? I don't know what that would look like, but.
Yeah.
Cause I like it really organized in one spot.
Right, yeah, like a brainstorm of like consideration.
Would it, do you want us to make like a table underneath the one that says like what who buy when and do like parking lot for possible budget cuts and
Yeah.
in there?
Ideas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
No,
Because
it's
I do think that, was every stone unturned across the district? No. Not at all. Not at all. We were really trying to prioritize internal, not internal, like
Not
STO,
school-based.
not school-based positions, roles, seeing some things as sacred, frankly, the like school resource allocation framework. That they have all these formulas for, that puts teams in a, what we call like red dollars, like they just get to positions. Now, do I think like I did last year on the salary team that we have to interrogate those? Like I feel, and I know Christy feels like we just were given these budget guidance documents for schools with all these formulas and ratios and red dollars and green dollars, and I don't know where those all come from. We spoke a little bit, cause, about the like, remember it last Thursday, that K3 1999 mill levy, $600,000 one? Like, that's one that was handed to us, and I feel like somebody ought to we ought to interrogate that, because when we started down that path, we were like, yeah, 5 years ago, $600,000 got you a lot of teachers, and now it doesn't. Is that still the right allocation? And I want to sit with elementary schools and say, like, we promised the voters in 1999, K3 classroom sizes of 17 to 24. Are we hitting that? And if so, do we still need to be funding 12 additional FTE to get there, K3? Like, I don't know. Apparently, I think that there's like this whole list of things on that school resource allocation framework that I think also gets at those questions of like, is this the right work? Are these the right positions? Are we getting what we need out of them? Why are they here? I look at everything. We were kind of looking at some of these school resource allocations of like peak staffing and, yeah, I think district front offices is very inconsistent how we fund that. You all have talked about discrepancies even in like middle school class sizes across the district. Why is that happening? What's going on there? How are we getting away with classroom sizes of 12 in one school consistently and 25 in the other? Like, how is that happening? And so I do think we have a lot of work on that. But we started it like in this group last year, and I do think it's work we have to keep doing, because I can tell you better now where a lot of those things came from, but whether it's correct, like, I think one, is it correct? And to your point, are we getting what we wanted out of this? I mean, one of the things that I'm hearing really clearly is like clarity and consistency around, say, what deans and coaches are doing seems unclear. And if we have a pretty clear theory of action, would that not look a little bit consistent? And I know that, so, yeah, somebody finish it.
And I'm also, what I'm hearing and what I want to ask her, I was just trying to look and I couldn't answer the question. In the CDC, is fair share part of the CDC?
No.
And so I think that's maybe the big question that's sort of on the table right now that we're talking about, and how does fair share work? And it is what came out of the learning acceleration plan was part of the fair share or outside of the fair share, and I think that's.
Well, and I'll be honest, Penny, fair share, and this is clarity that we've gotten in talking to Shannon recently, was designed with the interest of making sure that staff felt that budgeting was clear, transparent, and that the district was appropriately allocating funding to teacher salaries. Against other priorities, not maybe against, but that it was prioritizing and owning that commitment, right? That was the interest. So the team here came up with a calculation in whatever, 2000, Shannon was a big part of that, of a calculation that was meant to solve for this, to solve for commitment, to make sure that there would be a clear, clear commitment or path to making sure that money was being allocated. Transparency. One of the things that's gotten really hard over the last year, and I knew this last year talking to Nathan, was that adjustments in the school finance formula and the way that fair share was defined as the total program fund, and now a lot of other funding is pushed through that, makes it very different than it was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Because of the way the school finance formula has changed. The other thing, in talking to Shannon, was she was very clear saying, you can't do fair share for declining enrollment. Like, it doesn't work. You're like double banking against yourself. It's never gonna be a formula that works in a declining enrollment context. And so one of the pieces that, and Shannon was like, I think, because Christine and I were struggling, like, I knew that it was messy because of the school finance formula and the complexity and the things that are being dumped in the total program funding that weren't 10 and 5 and 10 and 20 years ago. And then that clarity from Shannon was very interesting. And I think that we probably have some work to do on that. How do we take that interest and honor that interest and come up with a process moving forward in a declining enrollment world that works?
That seems
Because
important.
the math doesn't math for fair share if you're declining every year. So I do think that could be something that the team works on, and I'll name it like that too. And Shannon's been an incredible consultant advisor for us this year, and she has definitely said, like, I'm more than willing to come in and help you think of like, how do we honor that interest? But given the new constraints and changes, what's the formula that's gonna work, or a process that will feel more appropriate in this time? So I do think that's something that we probably need to grapple with. I mean,
It does seem like that, was just sort of a handshake agreement that has been alive for a while, and it's not part of the contract, and I don't wanna, like, but maybe it needs to be renamed or re-looked at, because it also hasn't really been being honored for the past decade or something. It's like a goal that we never meet. So what does it look like? But it also makes me think, like, adding those buildings, like our student teacher ratio 18.23 or whatever it is. That's students per staff, like young person versus old person in the building. Is that right?
It's what we would say the ratio for green dollars that are certified staff that can be anything from core content to specials.
Yeah.
to
So
intervention.
would I be right in saying that, like, adding deans and coaches to buildings makes the class sizes larger?
No.
Because are they incorporated in that student teacher
It's a
ratio?
really good question, no. So the 18.35 to get the green dollars for the FTE.
Yeah.
Doesn't, it's 18.35. Deans, principals, I'm trying to think, are separate from that calculation.
Okay.
So yeah, so they're not in that chunk, nor is anybody on the CLDE team. Because then there's a 1 to 29.
Right.
That adds on FTE for the number of students in program. And that adds your CLDE coaches and interventionists or, teachers, that 29 to 1.
Yeah.
And so the deans and the principals are outside of that, the ADs are outside of that.
Okay. Good to know.
But I do think that question, I mean, there's a lot of questions around deans, and I understand that part of them have to do with the money piece, and part of them have to do with the admin piece.
Well, part of it has to do that there was no teacher input at all in the creation of this situation, so I think there's just this mystique of like.
And your
Yeah.
teacher would push on it consistently.
Yeah, and it's an interesting question because, it obviously does tie to our, like, budget objective in this conversation, but it's weird to me that the student teacher ratio hasn't changed very much since that tiny change we made a few years ago. And yet it seems like in our district, the class sizes keep getting bigger. So how is that? Like, there's something weird going on there. And I don't know what it is. I don't know how to get to the bottom of it, but just in the context of this whole conversation and what's the most effective way to help these kids and close the achievement gap, ballooning class sizes has not helped. And so I don't know why that's happening, but this is the first time ever since I've been in this district that people are talking about 30+ kids in a room. It's never been like that. So and it's weird that the ratio hasn't changed, and yet, like, why is that happening? I don't know. But
Miles, can I, again, is it silly? Somebody was explaining that part of the reason that happens now has to do with, at least at the middle schools and high schools, the planning periods. Is that your experience? That when everybody was guaranteed the daily planning period plus the team period that the class size went up? Is that? I don't, I'm just wondering, I'm just pressure testing your question card, because.
I couldn't say with any.
Okay.
I agree that class sizes have been getting bigger. But I would say prior to the schedule changes in high school and heading periods, they were already. My average class size for years was 26, 27.
And now it's at 30+.
It's still there. I mean, every year I have at least one class that's up there. Probably for the last 7 or 8 years.
And Alicia, because I know you talked about this before, yours are massive. And am I right that, like, because at least in like tracking your conversations about schedules and staffing, like part of it also has to do with that factor that like we also have classes running at 8 and 12.
Yeah, it is, it very much tracks on, but it's also contingent on, the actual schedule, the building schedule.
Yeah.
And so a lot of like what we realized upon starting the school year, and when I say we, I want to say like Lindsay really realized was when we looked at why science numbers were so high is because so many of our freshmen needed classes to be in with the 5-period day, that most of the kids, their electives are in science. And so we, according to the science numbers, you know, we have close to 500 or whatever for school wide, but according to the science numbers, what we see is 700. So like it is, you know, so then it makes like the piece of the pie, instead of it being like science, social studies, English, you know, the 4 cores, right? And then math, you know, and then the little piece for electives or specials or whatever, you know. We are taking a really large chunk of that because we're basically 2 departments right now.
There's kids that have 2 science classes.
Yeah, because
One of them's
they
elective.
needed to go somewhere.
Environmental
The freshmen needed to be in a classroom. And so, and then, you know, they like science, you know, it's fun. And so
Yeah,
they
there's
double
always-
book in science. And so, I mean, it's a great thing for their education, but as far as staffing is concerned, it's a really rough thing because it's making it so that we have these ginormous classes as science teachers. And so we're trying to fix that with some of the changes we're proposing for schedules, but I don't know if it's just, it's always like you do one small thing and then there's a catalyzing event. And so for us, the small thing was that we all agreed to be on this 5-period alternating block for all 3 comprehensive high schools. And we agreed to do that for the last 2 years. And that has had a catalyzing event for all 3 schools. And it just looks different depending on the school size and on resources. But yeah, I mean, I think that should never be viewed lightly. I would say that would be the lesson learned, hopefully, from the higher level, looking down on the past. Is that if you make a schedule change that impacts all 3 high comprehensive,
Yeah.
you need to really have a lot of research and to know all of those moving parts so that it doesn't just happen and then we are where we are now, which is that, you know, classes of over 30 and it's just, it feels really tight, you know?
Well, and I-
Meanwhile, up the road or, you know, just down the hall, somebody has a class of 10. So, you know, and so it's just at the same time, you know? And so that just doesn't feel, doesn't feel fair or whatever, but I don't know that that has to do with as much with budget as it has to do with that choice around the schedule. And so like, I just think that should, I just throw that out there, that should really be like any future choices like that, that impacts every high school student with the exception of our alternative high schools, really they should be doing their homework. Like, this should not just be taken lightly, and I think it kind of slightly was, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it had a lot of unintended impacts of work, especially in the summer.
I mean, I didn't mean to send us down the ratio rabbit hole, because that's a long, but to tie it back to the budget thing, I think one of the things that we just need to make sure of is that we don't have adults included in that student-teacher ratio who are not hanging out with kids all day. Because all those adults that don't have kids, those kids are in other people's classes, and that's affecting.
And you said not deans and not principals, but what about coaches? I'm not sure.
If you go to, it's in last year's salary IBB. And again, you guys, this isn't totally updated, but it's called draft form RFCA. Conversation is a topic. Yeah. And I'll put this link in our thing.
Oh, yeah.
Remember
I
this
remember
thing?
this, I do.
This is and again, this was meant to. I'm gonna just put it so you can look at it. This was meant to be more transparent and clear about these ratios and the numbers. And so you'll hear admin talk about green dollars, red dollars, but this does not correspond to that. It's a different explanation. Putting it to the top of page 2 of our resource allocation framework. So this was meant, and frankly, again, this was like me trying to wrap my head around how we're doing this. And I think that this is where a lot of, I think, you know, some of those staffing decisions around the LAP to me were just like, they were just baked in. So that this is how it's done. I'm like, okay, let's go. But let's interrogate this. But what you'll see here, at least in this, the way this is set is, so in terms of like green and red, and the way this was trying to lay out was what I wanted to understand is like, what are we trying to do at each level? What's the goal here? Because there was a lot of talk about positions or things we wanted, and I just felt like we didn't have a way to all look at this in the same time. And so you'll see this target elementary school for enrollment 4,500, and then you'll see the draft, because this was last year what we were trying to build into the 24-25 budget. If it's white, it meant we did not have funding for these things, or it was uncertain. And so then you'll see the target middle school, and you'll see the draft middle school, you'll see the target high school, and it's kind of, column G was Fork and Basalt, column H is Glenwood. And to be honest, I don't know that these were targets. I was just trying to name, in some cases, the current reality. And I will name one of the things that this was really cool for, it doesn't have an impact anymore, I don't even know if it's on here. But last year, when we had lots of movement and immigration, we started to work with the CLDE team, with administrators to say, hey, if we were able to allocate funding specifically for newly immigrated students, what would that look like? Could we come up with ratios? Could we come up with a model that then someday, if there was lots of money, we could fund it? What was really cool is we did a bunch of work and then the state gave us 200 grand. And so we were able to say, awesome, we've actually, and that money was specifically for newly immigrated student supports. So we were able to then use these formulas on column 45 or row 45 to say, oh, awesome, we got 200,000 to infuse into newly immigrated student supports. We've already agreed on the staffing ratios for funding. And so then what we did at the end of last year was we calculated the student populations of newly immigrated student supports. And then I want to say the money went to Glenwood, GSES, I think Fork. And they got, you know, like a little bit of money from some paras or interventionists that helped this year. State funding's gone, so that won't be funded next year, but that was what this was intended to help with, those kinds of decision-making processes or when there's money. But I really feel, especially given the world we're looking at, that these are worth interrogating. You know, like, what do these numbers come up with? Are these the right targets? I also have a lot of questions. You guys, if you've looked at the demographic reports, like, we don't have a whole lot of schools these sizes. What happens when you go to 300? Do you still get a principal and an admin and a dean and an assistant? Like, I don't know. And I know when I look at that 10-year demographics study that we're gonna have schools dip. And when are we gonna have a conversation about how do you right size that?
Yeah.
Cause I think a lot about like what we did when we had more enrollment. Like the steps we took when our schools were too big. And do we need to then maybe reverse some of those decisions that were made now that our schools are becoming smaller?
Or where's that cutoff? Like you're saying, like, is it at 300? Is it 250? You know, what is the actual cutoff for the need, you know?
Totally.
Can I add something? One thing that, you know, the auditor said this too, is that we did not get ourselves into this situation with the financial health in 1 year. And it's gonna take longer than a year to get out. And so to that, I was looking at calculating all those one-time fixes for this year, for next year, and what we're gonna have to solve for in 26, 27, and it's around $1 million that we're still looking like having to cut or solve for. The other thing that was disturbing that we found over the last week or so was I just took the October count, okay, student count, and then I took out the 12th grade and added in another grade for kindergarten, assuming kindergarten is first, and it's at 75 student loss. So the demographer's estimate is not conservative. So that's one thing that I've got some concerns about into the next fiscal year. We were pretty aggressive with those estimates, and I just want to let you guys know that. So we've got some unknowns with that. So looking at also what's happening with the at-risk populations, and we had $100,000 reduction this year from our at-risk. So that's another one that we're gonna have to really watch carefully. And I mean, I don't know how we're gonna do it at the schools, but I'm just gonna make a recommendation to people to just really bother our parents and just get all of those free and reduced lunch count applications in, because that's real money to the district. When we first, there were some errors in the initial data. We thought we were gonna drop $1 million this year. Now, thankfully, it only got to 100,000, but it's still underlying a concern for the future. Not only about just making sure our processes are shored up as some of these other post-COVID like rules are going away that were helping to shore our at-risk counts higher. So let's see here. I guess I need to name the additional errors, like favorable, unfavorable. I still have some concerns around the salary budget being too low, even for our teacher salaries, even after I shorted up for our supplemental budget, I was looking at that in our quarterly financial report. And I still have like $500,000 or so, because we're running over 50% for mid-year, which is concerning to me. It's not, it's 51.6%, but it's enough for me to be like, it's pretty tight. And I just want to look at that a little bit more.
Christy, can you pause? What do you mean we're running over 51? What does that mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you're
Yeah,
good.
I'm-
Question,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, usually, yeah, a quarterly financial report, generally speaking, we look to see that our expenses are running at 50% or a little bit less, but we don't like them to run more, especially for something like a $33 million line item. We don't want that running at 51.5%, 51.6%, and.
What does it mean?
After the second quarter.
Yeah.
It means that
Yeah.
we're halfway through the year and we've spent more than half.
Yeah.
Order there, we're good.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Halfway through the year, we've spent more than half.
Yeah, and I just,
Still on the way up the mountain. We've spent half
Right,
of our
well,
budget,
and-
half of our-
yeah, I know
We
there's
ate
one
too
more
much
thing, you guys.
food, like Oregon Trail.
Exactly, thank you, Oregon Trail.
There's one more thing I wanna make sure I get out there.
Yeah.
As long as I've deflated the room a little bit. Is that I really haven't been able to do a deep dive yet on all 4 of the options around the governor's proposals in legislature that can have a $600,000 shift either way or funding. So there's all these unknowns out there. We put a pretty aggressive plan together to really say, you know, we really are resolving for everything we know right now. But it just underlines what everybody has already said about the need to looking for potential for additional budget money.
Yeah.
And it could be for, my hope is it's for, you know, getting to PPO 8 or something like that, but it could be for solving for some other issues that come up. I just want to put that out there. You know, I want to spend every dollar we have available, but I don't want to spend more than we have available, and that's a really tight rope to watch.
And you're not even naming like the scariest part, which is that who knows when they're at risk when they from federal government side.
Yeah.
I know we can't plan on that, but like, more talking about being a different feeling district, like we're a different feeling country.
Yeah.
Christy,
No, I
has the
really-
governor said anything about
Well, he's
funding?
saying we're gonna annex Canada, so I'm like, I don't give much credence, but
Yeah.
good point. Yeah.
Has the governor said anything about increasing funding free and reduced free lunches and free breakfast? 'Cause
Right now, we introduce lunch students.
yeah,
I'm sorry,
for all students. As you talked
Free
about,
lunch for all?
free lunch for all.
Yeah, don't we already have that?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's,
He
it's
talked about,
money.
when he talked about taking it away,
Oh.
he said the state overspent way higher than they thought it was.
And that's one of the reasons why our at-risk counts are going way down, and so it's like, and so I don't know. I'm not,
Right. I mean, I don't wanna take that away, I'm not saying that, but that might cause our aspirants numbers to go back up. Oh, if you actually have filled the form, you get it. I don't
Yeah.
want that overall, but, I just didn't know if that had been made a decision because they changed the state budget this year.
Yeah.
Cause you're talking about the governor, like the averaging, is that what you're talking about? Like that idea of averaging instead of doing is that what you're
I'm referring,
really?
yeah, I'm referring to, I mean, that is one of the options, because there's the 10% phase in and there's the 18% phase in approach. But there's 2 other options that have a lot of different, different buttons that people are pushing that I really haven't delved into. It is Tracy Rainey put out a spreadsheet, and you guys might get those emails that she had 4 different options. And so all I did is based upon that student count, which is not correct, that I can't change because they just won't let me. But I just said, oh, well, there's a $600,000 differential between the lowest option and the highest. So that's all the research I've been able to do so far. But that's where that is coming from.
Can I pivot us with one quick question?
Please.
Laura, it was hired for that finance position, she's moving into that. And it was pointed out to me that last week we posted 2 new district office openings, one for a payroll manager and one for an accounting and finance specialist. And I wasn't, are we losing 2 people? Like, I know we are
Switched over and Dave classes in one person with us.
got it.
So that's our position.
That was just brought up. I mean, I guess thinking about like what we brought up about right sizing the district office. And what I'm hearing from teachers who saw the slideshow is like, if we're counting on 15, not replacing 15 positions due to attrition. Like, where's the attrition in the district office and,
I'll
you know.
that, again, I've said that, like, I don't know, when we look at our district office departments and teams, yes, we have a lot of work to do. All the same stuff we're saying about interrogating this, we need to be interrogating our HR, our finance, our operational teams, our ACES teams. Are we, you know, what's happening? I will say, because my role is in finance for the last 8 months. I believe confidently that we need a budget analyst and we need the positions that we have right now. We cannot get this work done. The complexity of the school finance, the complexity of the stinking loan program that we've never had to manage before, like, we will not be able to, I mean, there's no way. I feel very comfortable and confident that our finance team has to have every position it currently has, a budget analyst. And then we gotta get those folks placed, trained, up to capacity, up to hitting the speed and reassess. But I do think that a lot of the internal errors on inability to get reconciliations done, to know quarterly financials, yes, has to do with, timelines and skills and capacity and training of the team. I also think it just has to do with not having the bandwidth and the right folks, to enough people to do the work.
What about outside of the finance department? So
If we're, I think that's a really good question.
we're reducing 15 FTE at a teacher level. I just feel like there needs to be some sort of equivalent.
Well, and it's, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's, yeah, how do we, like, those 15 are secondary to all the ratios and the number of kids we're losing, right? So that is, and that is, we do that shifting often. When the school budgets come out and we look at enrollments, there is often a plus minus for staffing that principals deal with. When you see bubbles, when you see drops, when charter schools get better or worse, you see that out, right? So that fluctuates with kids. And so, you know, we haven't fundamentally changed the staffing ratios for those positions, but it's all secondary to loss of kids.
It feels like when the district gets bigger, the DO adds, when the district gets smaller, the DO doesn't subtract.
Yeah.
So then you get bigger again and you add more. And, you know, I would be interested in seeing the numbers. How much has the district overall grown by students in the last 15 years? And how much has the DO grown in the last 15 years? I think that would be very telling.
I would also like to know, or I guess pose a question, hypothetical sort of question, which is when a teacher does not do their job well or does not have time to do their job, are they replaced by 4 other teachers so that now that job can get done better? Or is it just another teacher or that same teacher who has to keep doing everything they possibly can with the limited resources that they can? We always, as a teacher, the thing that is in the most demand for me is my time. I never have enough time, ever do I have enough time. There's never been a day when I have gone home in my 24 years of teaching, when I have said, okay, I've done everything I can do. There are always more things I can do. I can always, you know, be grading my students' work better, or creating rubrics more, or giving more feedback to kids, or, you know, entering grades, or, you know, all these I could be rearranging my room, I could be cleaning stuff, whatever, I could be doing all these things. I never, ever have enough time, and I am never given another person to do my work, and I do a damn good job with what I do. But I never get somebody else, and there are teachers who are working as hard, if not harder than I am. We don't get more people to help us with our jobs. And if we don't do a good job, we lose our job and somebody else comes in and takes that place. Now, I think you have thankfully named last week that we had a budget, a district financial, person who did not do a good job. That person did not lose their job, I don't think, because of this whole fiasco. And I'm not advocating for Chrissy, who has taken that position too. So I'm not advocating at all for that kind of thing, but
You fired.
I'm not trying to say that. Hope you don't think I'm like.
I use political environments, I have a sixth sense of humor, sorry.
But that person screwed up. And now we're trying to replace that person with more people. If a teacher has screwed up and done past the horrible things that individual did, we would not be replacing that teacher with more additional teachers. We would have another poor sap teacher in there who would be required to do the same work and just say, hey, do your best work and here, we'll give you some coaching.
And that would be coached by the other veteran teachers that have.
Which would
They don't have any support to take on all the extra work.
So, I mean, I hear what you're saying and I hear, okay, we need to have this, we need to have this, we need to have it too, and we're not getting it. And I hear what Miles is saying. Let's look at over time. I can tell you that our district office has a lot more people than we did 15 years ago. A lot more people. We used to have one person in HR. We used to have 2 people in finance. And Shannon was a miracle worker. She could do anything that she wanted to do. She worked her tail off. She could do everything that she wanted to do, and she could explain it to us, and she was clear and transparent. I'm not saying that that's not happening. I'm just saying you are advocating for more and more people. How many people are in the finance office now?
How many total?
Yeah.
There would be 6. There's 2 in payroll. There is, the comptroller, the accounts payable, the accountant, and budget analyst, and then myself.
So that's 3 times as many people as we had 15 or so years ago. Do we have 3 times as many teachers? How about in HR? Do we have like 8 people or something in HR?
I wish.
How many?
5.
5, okay. So that's, I believe 5, I believe it was, when it was Nikki, I believe it was just Nikki. Maybe she had somebody helping her, I'm not sure. There might have been 2 people, but I mean, at least twice as many people. And I know we haven't gone up that many in teachers. And I'm not trying to say your jobs are easy and you shouldn't have those people. I just don't think your argument holds water.
Which argument?
The argument that okay, we need more people. I really feel strongly, you're saying that we need
for
these
finance?
people.
Yes. Oh, I do.
And the positions.
I mean, wait, you said, and the which positions?
I think the ones that I mentioned that were posted, it feels like if we're operating on an attrition model, that if we lost a finance specialist, then maybe we shouldn't replace that position. I think that might be what you're saying.
I'm just saying, the argument that we need somebody else, additional people to do these jobs. I hear that it's a hard job and you probably could have 10 more people and still not get everything done that you want to get done. But do we have the resources for that? And is that happening in the same kind of ratio that it's happening with the teachers? And with our classified staff? I mean, they're going down.
The new position that is being added was another position that isn't being filled. And so it was not an added position.
Right.
Yeah,
We
Yeah,
understand.
you know, I don't know, I can only name the lens of complexity that I've seen in the last few years of finance and grant management and what that requires. And I feel, having gotten to know, I hear your concerns and I think it's a really strong push and a valid push. I don't know how we do finance with the rest of the team right now, and I don't know that we can support and sustain staff without having those teams. And I don't know that, I don't know that we can deliver financial accountability and transparency for the district without those roles right now. I think we've really failed in the last couple of years, and I think there's a lot of factors. But I hear you on that sense of the district, the DO globe, and that's why this team last year, right, we have those comps of looking at district offices across the region and what is it, you know, because you can't, it's not as easy on some positions to do a one-to-one comp, but I think it's, you know, kind of your HR, payroll, finance across similar sized districts is really interesting to look at. And, you know, is that work we want to continue and look at again? I think we have a spreadsheet from last year's salary IDB that we looked at DO sizes across school districts. I think that's really important, to continue to look at. But I don't see a way, and again, I feel pretty comfortable in this in finance, having seen the work and watched the team, that we can't do it with any less than those 7, and we're barely hanging on. I don't think it's fair to hire a CFO and expect her to work 80-hour work weeks, and that's what she's been doing since August. And that's not sustainable for Christy. That's not sustainable for this district. And I hear you. I mean, and I know we often try not to like compare suffering and IBB, and I know that no one here's got an easy job. And I know that our role is to look for solutions to that. And our role is to try to figure out how do we lighten the load for each other. And I think it's a fair push for accountability of like, yeah, let's look at the comps across districts and district offices. Absolutely, let's do it. And I think there are some departments that I feel more strongly than others. And I would say finance is the one that I feel pretty firm in, that like, yeah, we were the wrong size. And that's part of what got us into this. And yeah.
Well, maybe part of the, go ahead.
I wanna address this because I think it's really important, that this team hears this. When I first got to the district, obviously with all the fiscal crises and things like that, my first expectation that I heard from the board, heard from the superintendent as things were being uncovered, is that we cannot allow this to happen again. As we have been uncovering these items, which we still may not be done, as I've been talking about a little bit, and some of it is projections, some of it's the state, some of it's all these different other things that come down on, unfortunately, on schools, that are all too common. I had to look at all that and say, man, we're $17 million in the hole. Why is that? The board is asking, why is this? And so I've been, scouring the records, looking at everything, looking at, deeply at what my staff does. And part of my answer is that this district was operating on such a bare bones budget with the finance staff and things like that, with somebody that was very capable, that when she walked out, and she is very capable, she's one of my favorite people in the whole world, okay? Is that there was no capacity and nobody that wanted to give up their whole life for this. And then on top of it, then everything happened of CDE that gave it so much more complexity, and we added grants and, all these other things happened. And we also did not have people looking at our budgets. We didn't have any redundancy in our system. We had nothing to assure that our finances are shored up. And so I did not walk in here. And say, I want another person, whatever. I did not do that. I took time to say, can I do this with this team? How do I shift my team to make sure that I'm getting the most out of them is the other thing that I've been doing behind the scenes with that. And, you know, and with that, we've already been working through how we do quarterlies, because that's an important thing that has not been coming out of the team that needs to. So we're adding that workload on that needs to get done, but we're trying to, with the budget analyst, create systems to ensure, at least in this moment, I'm not saying maybe 5 years from now that this will be different as we get into more defining moments, et cetera. But in this moment, how can we assure and make sure we're shoring up our finances so that we can have, you know, a good financial picture moving forward that'll ensure that we're gonna all flourish. And so that is the reason for the budget analysts. And I was raised by 2 teachers, so I know the concern with administration. I know the frustration around it. And I knew that when I made that, had that conversation with Anna, with the board, that was not an easy discussion even for me to. But at some point, when people are holding you accountable to these higher expectations now, you gotta be able to tell them what is reasonable and do that. And, you know, even this group, I mean, anybody should be able to ask me that and say, why? And I should be able to answer that, or if I don't perform, my team doesn't perform, I expect that extreme ownership in my position. I expect it. But I just wanted you guys to know a little bit of the story behind that, because you guys deserve that too, because this isn't a matter of one person being overworked. This is a matter of a lot of people trying to get to the right solutions. And so that's why I'm being very transparent around that whole thing. Okay.
Christy, I appreciate that so much, and I understand where you're coming from. From Megan, what Megan said and what you're saying, I'm gonna put it into the teacher perspective. We're being told to close the achievement gap. We're being told to figure it out. We're having interventionists taken away from us. Our class sizes are huge. We have more behavior problems, more trauma, more mental situations, especially since 2020. And we're getting resources consistently taken away from us. And so it's not to say that what you're doing isn't 100% like, I want every mistake found. I want to know that we're secure. I want to know we're safe. But where are we as teachers getting the same resources when the board is asking us, our superintendent's asking us, our principals are on our back? Close the gap, close the gap. The community, you're not doing enough. We don't get anything extra ever. We get more on our plate, less respect, less time for our families and our mental health. And so it is super frustrating. We sit down and hear, and I'm not saying you, but when we hear, especially prior to you coming, so-and-so isn't doing the job right, so we're just gonna hire somebody else. It doesn't feel good. And so we have deans now, and we have coaches now, and we don't have enough people in front of these kids. We don't have math interventionists. Some buildings don't have reading interventionists that are full-time, so not all of our kids. So our classroom teachers have to do reading intervention while entertaining kids who are on grade level. Imagine doing that with 5, 6, 7-year-olds. That's not equitable for these kids. It's not closing the gap that is on our back all the time. Sorry.
No, it's, I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate both of your guys' honesty. It's just, I mean, these are really, this is the work. These are the hard conversations, that we've been up against all year. So I just appreciate the honesty, but you know, I'm gonna tell you as a professional where I have to stand right now too. It can't change to, all of a sudden that I can get it done. You know, I mean, you know, I'm working as fast as hard as I can too. But I understand that frustration. I saw it in my own house, you know, when I was growing up, and I know how much harder it's gone. So
Well, I think it's bigger than just this one position.
Yeah, it's not.
You know,
It's not.
so we're talking about finance right now, but we're gonna have this conversation, I'm telling you, about every department at the DO. So get ready to start defending them, because with all the crap we're dealing with, the least you could do is pay us.
Well, it's 6:34. Should we look at the,
The box,
items
yeah, the
and
action.
see who can do what?
Megan's already taken over salary comp. comparison, she's already started work, I'm gonna help her with salary sandbox, I already started kind of playing around with that. Trying to get it updated, Begonia, do you have a current scattergram of sorts for like
How
where
many
people are,
people-
step one to lanes?
It was created for accounting, I kind of think. I
Do you
don't,
know how they did it? Or
don't.
do you know if it was all Nathan or if you?
I think he was, no, I'll have to do something with that.
Okay, or if you have someone below you, who Nathan might have pushed, taken
Yeah.
that down to.
I don't have nobody's like, but we were down a person, so, and I'd have to train them and I don't even know how to do it yet. But here's my question. Yes, put that on the list, but I'm gonna ask if I can get the school budgets up first.
Yeah, I was just thinking if Begonia had information and I could just do it for you.
Yeah, she does, yeah. So that's-
I know she deals with the lane changes and step
Yeah.
increases, so.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
No, that's okay. I wonder, we pull in, I think, Shannon could help us.
I think we're just gonna, I think we can put it on the list, we just have to give Christie and the team time. Like,
Yeah.
I think, I understand that this is something that has been done by the CFO when there's money to infuse into the sandbox. I just, it's gonna take time.
And in that category, this is right sizing the VO and asking for a comparison of how much the district has grown. We also have a comparison of neighboring districts.
Yeah.
Part of that also.
I mean, just to throw out that this is what I was thinking about before, and I wanna kind of circle this meeting back to the beginning when Nina said, like, we really appreciated all the work that went into the presentation last week, and things are clear, and I agree with everyone that we need to go through this with a fine tooth comb. We need to look at all the positions and if we're, getting the most for the effort that we're putting forth. Like at Bridges, we're gonna go do a couple of school visits next week, next month to some other alternative schools, in Colorado and stuff. And I was just thinking about that as a strategy for, trying to increase our efficiency at the district level. Like, I'm wondering, what Kenny just said, like looking at those comparison districts, but I'm wondering if there are districts that are really cooking, like in their, like when you imagine, what did you call it, operational excellence? Like, do you have models for that? Like, is there a person, do you have like a hero as a superintendent that, but like, is there a place, that you guys go and be like, how are you guys doing this so efficiently with this number of people? You know what I mean? It's just something to think about that, I feel like we've all, in our valley over here, we sometimes just like keep building our ships and we don't realize that there's other people out there building ships, maybe with tools that we've never even heard of. So I don't know if that's a possibility or if I'm like way off and you've already done that, but are there districts that are operating, more efficiently and more checks and balances? And so it's just something to think about, but I do appreciate it, and I believed what everyone has said about how difficult like all of these jobs are and how we all need help that we can't get. So we just have to find it in ourselves and each other, right? And so, I don't know. I mean, that was a hard conversation, but I think it's a good thing for everybody to realize how hard it is for everyone right now.
And one other comment I'd like to make is, I think it's really important as a district that it's us. And it seems like often in these conversations, it's like teachers versus admin. In the sense that it's like taking sides, and I think it's just really important that we look at it as a big us, which is what they call it us.
Yeah.
I guess to that point, Kenny, thank you for bringing that up. Like, I know that
One of the ways we do that is because of our commitment to interest-based bargaining versus traditional negotiation.
Yeah.
Right, and I guess I'm not clear, I was just looking back at last year's salary committee, because that's the only, it's my limited experience, and I feel like we were clear heading into the subcommittee what our interests were. And I'm not clear on what our shared interests are right now, and I know, and we heard very clearly, Nina, and I appreciate the work that came to a proposal. I don't know if it's an interest, if it's a negotiating starting point. I'm just unclear as to, like, when I look at last year, I can see, oh yeah, there were our interests in terms of what we were tackling and working on, and I feel like we talked a lot about issues, and we've all offered an incredible amount of time, and I want us to be grounded in that shared commitment, and I'm just not sure what that anchor is right now. And I think we could keep talking about it.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
I think we kind of left it a little bit vague this year on purpose, because we don't know what's happening with how much money we're getting. We don't know how much help it's gonna cost. And so I think we left our interest a little bit open, and coming here tonight, we had a better sense of what we wanted. But I think we could do a grounding next time and like come back to that and be like, okay, let's look back at the interest, let's look back, like, how do we make sure that these things are of shared interest and that we're grounding back into that?
I appreciate that, just to know like what we're
Yeah.
working on together versus what can
Yeah.
feel like oppositionally.
That's a good point.
Because slipping into positionality, which I didn't think was what we signed up for with interest-based bargaining.
Yeah, and it feels like a little bit tonight, like we were just sharing some stories, like everybody had something that they needed to say, and, but you're right, like I was on that committee with you last year, and it felt very collaborative, and like we had a purpose, like we had to figure out what to do with the budget, and it was, it turns out we were working with completely fabricated numbers, but it was still,
At least we were all working with the same thing.
yeah, I mean, within the same, you know. Yeah.
That should have been our first sign. The community chest.
Oh, right, yeah.
Monopoly money.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna have to pay the floor tax.
And also, before we go, do we need to have any kind of, want to have any kind of conversations? We talked next time we were going to an online format, right? That we were gonna be not in person.
I think we left it up. I don't
And if
think
that
we-
is the case, maybe we should have that conversation if we are meeting in person, and if not, if we are meeting online, then maybe we should have some kind of norming about how maybe that would look like. If that-
Like using the hand raise.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we are going to online, we should have some kind of like little norm set before we go into that.
Are we going online?
I thought that's,
Something I thought.
or maybe we
I
said the
thought it was
first
just like
two.
if people couldn't come or something.
I thought it,
So I know we have some of our members on tonight, like online, like one of ours is sick, another one has some school thing that they're doing.
it says full benefits group eat weekly and then shift to every other on Thursday, begin on the 6th, all in person, and then move to virtual. That's how it was written.
I would prefer to
I'm
continue meeting in
right,
person.
and I'm okay with that too, but
But are we gonna do weekly or bi-weekly? Do we wanna stick with Thursdays?
and it said on at least what we had written last time, it would be the 6th and the 13th, and then every other week.
Okay.
But it also said that after tonight is the virtual.
On Thursday? Yeah, it's fun. They don't have an answer, I mean.
Your soul.
I mean, let's hold the
13th?
13th, 4:30, let's try to be in person, when we guys we can. And then maybe from there, we'll decide if we're going to, like, how to do it. Does that sound good?
So one more in person and then we'll evaluate from that. Okay.
Is there anything on the to-do list that we haven't covered that we need to do?
Anyone want to, should we start taking on the dean coaches and calendars conversation? And the right sizing the deal conversation.
I mean, I think we can pull, we did start working on like a regional comps of district offices. We did something like that last year.
We have a meeting next Tuesday morning, so it would be helpful to get there.
They're contracted 10 more days.
Like, is it like,
I'm just like,
you just asking
yeah,
for
like,
input
is
stories?
that important to you? Like, what are those dates used for? Like,
could you function without
could you function without it? Just like, what's the general?
Yeah, they're all together next Tuesday.
Conversation about.
What's your guys' timeline? Because I know you guys have the school budgets that you're rolling out. What's your timeline for that? Just as soon as possible?
Yeah, as soon as possible. It would be amazing if we got it by the end of next week. It's probably more realistic that it's in the next 2.
Okay, I'm just saying, wondering with the to-do list, if like we need to hold off on some of that until that work is done, the school budget, and then we can dig in deeper into some of this. Cause it seems like some of it's on you and Chrissy, and it sounds like you guys don't really have time or space for it right now, so.
Christy for sure.
How much does it mess with the salary schedule sandbox, and we haven't been part of that before, if we just use last year's standard? Like, I know it's different, obviously, this year, but like, on average, it can't be crazy different.
Well, the area that we look at and we compare to is Masters 40, 15, and the reason that we try and focus on that is because historically it's been around that area where a lot of staff have left. And so, if that is a trend that continued last year, we might not be getting like the right amount of, I mean, it could be close, but we might be getting numbers that are not, because it might look like there are more or less, more people there, like say a bunch of people retired or whatever.
If we're so tight on budget, should we be messing with imprecise numbers?
Right.
Next, it would be next year's schedule, and really make it crazy.
I mean, I have no doubt that Christy can do it. It's just a matter of time, like by next Thursday now.
That's why I'm asking, because I'm also asking about the 13th again, just to honor people's time here. Because if you guys are really like on a tight timeline and you have a lot on your plate right now between, like, is it realistic for us to make like gains in, because I'm thinking of subcommittee works in the past I've done, like, you go back, you do your homework, you bring back new information, you use that new information to kind of progress. But if we are not gonna come back with new information, is it necessary to use, or should we shift that then to the 20th so that then you guys have that time to focus your energy on the building budgets?
There's a board meeting.
Oh, but regardless of whatever,
Yeah.
day, you know, like a later date, so that you guys have the mental space
Well,
to
we could use that
engage in.
first time of just, like you said, resetting our interests and redoing that.
That's what I was gonna say, Autumn. Like, I feel like another, even if it's loose, like coalescing around, here's some work that we're gonna work on this year. For this team, I think would be helpful to define the scope of what we're gonna try to get done as a team. Does that make sense? I think that there's value. We're gonna be meeting next Thursday to talk through that. Like, what are our shared interests? And thus, what do we feel like are the solutions that we want to start chasing down in subcommittee of this, these 2 people are gonna check this out, and this thing. So, and I know, like, I can do that. I don't know, like, maybe if that's still just kind of an interest conversation, we can see what Christy can do. In terms of timelines and where she's at by then. But that, I can. So I don't care about those schedules.
So what's the question?
So it's different work than traditional subcommittee work, is what you're saying, for next week.
Well, I mean, I think it's about, I guess I feel like we talked about a lot of issues and challenges. I don't feel clear on what the shared interests that are driving what we're choosing to start working on. And I feel like we could continue this conversation to get clear on that. Like last year, we were trying to figure out how to invest money into the salary schedule. We were trying to get clear on the resource allocation framework. We were, like 4 things. We were working on permanent school guest teachers and seeing if we could fund that. We had a shared interest in trying to figure that out. We had an interest in trying to address prior experience and additional duty compensation. And so we've had really clear interests that we were trying to come back to the larger group with.
Sort of like subcategories of the overall interest, so was that based on stories?
Yeah.
Is that how that, I'm trying to like go back in time to like how these subcategories.
I know. Clarify what we're.
I think part of what that worked on is we had a number to base it on too. And I think a lot of the work was around a number.
Okay.
The salary number, that this is what we have, how are we gonna do that?
But the specifics of the number though, like on subs, I mean, what else did you say were
It was, the priorities were
priorities? That's what I'm,
to update the salary schedule. We had SPED recommendations that we had to figure out. Permanent school-based guest teachers, so we were trying to figure out what that would cost. They bring a recommendation back to the team. We were to review that strategic planning document and staffing, and we had an interest in transparency and clarity around how schools were staffed. And so this is not what this looked like before the committee started tackling it. But it was.
We also talked about district office staffing compared to other districts.
Right. The treasure chest.
yeah.
So don't we have like notes from when we were with Randy and we chose, I can't find the document where.
We didn't. So maybe that's, I mean, that feels like a conversation a little bit what you're doing today.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, maybe we can distill our notes from today into subcategories or something to help task us with where to go next or something.
I think we did tell stories. I'm looking at the notes on page 3. Oh, the notes are called Whole Group IBB Meetings 24/25. And on page 3, in bold, it says RFCEA interest. We have an interest in creating a competitive full package of salary and benefits. And I think those bullets underneath are the stories.
Yeah, you're right.
Can you read that again?
Yeah, on page 3, RFCEA interest, we have an interest in creating a competitive full package of salary.
Page 1.
Yeah, and then the story is all underneath that, so it's kind of like coming up with some bullet points related to those stories.
I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Maybe even if it's then.
Kind of working through those stories to figure out, what are the themes, and I think.
Or priorities, right? That's what you,
Or straw,
committee.
proposals.
Yeah.
Like, which I feel like is what Nina laid out, like, here's a proposal, this would be a full package, right?
Yeah.
And then we can talk through like, And we do that, what are the contexts, what's, you know, we know right now, I would say we know right now, there's not extra money. So if we're gonna, if the only way to get there is to infuse more money, we gotta find that money, cut it, get somewhere.
Right. Okay. So do we have all of the things on the grid, the deans and coaches calendars? Kendall mentioned that she could, are you at that meeting? No.
She just knows it is happening.
So I wonder if somebody could.
I wonder if we could ask Molly to do that.
Yeah.
I can go if needed, is that work, that's easy.
Don't put her name.
We
Oh,
should
yeah.
run eventually.
I'll put Molly.
Cause I think she's watching.
She's watching.
So, sure, okay.
You
just got voluntold to do
something. And then the right sizing, the DO, a comparison, I mean,
You said you think, Anna, you could find that pretty easily based on last year?
She was saying the comparison between different districts. And I think that's something we can, that one we don't have to have for next year. But I think it's more
Yeah.
on that, but it's not something we would need to have.
right, okay.
We
But I
could
think
put
it's
that
the
date.
subcommittee for, like,
Yeah.
development.
Yeah.
Hey, let's break up the school districts,
Yeah.
figure them out, and there's different state tools you can use, I don't know if they're always right, I mean, right, can we worked with that one last year?
We have one that we started last year that we could use as a starting base. Did I paste that in here?
Yeah, that would be
Yeah,
great.
just so we can see what, the way that comparison worked.
And then brainstorm interest for the salary team, I think that's what we talked about.
I think we just got there.
Yep, and then regional comps,
That's that one.
that's that, yep, that's what, I'm just trying to check the boxes. And then we got a parking lot and we're meeting still next week, correct?
Same time.
Same time in person, and we'll keep on keeping on.
Begonia, do you know about the calendars for the literacy and math coaches? Are they the same as the teacher calendars or?
Yes.
They're not the 5 day before or the 5 day after.
No. Only
So
dean.
just eat.
Just the dean.
Thanks, everyone, for